I said during Ramadan, when I recite Surah Fatiha, I feel like you reciting to me.
Oh.
I was feeling so good. It was like during praying or every time when I read it, the Surah Fatiha, I feel like you reciting to me in my head. I remember you and
Well, it's
and I said that was so nice to feel it that way.
so this is called rabita. So there's somebody has a connection to someone, then it's possible that. So of course, we are reciting Fatiha. Allah Ta'ala sent down Fatiha twice, which is one of the reasons it's so prominent in prayers. But so when we look on a pool of water, maybe there's some ducks and some fish moving around and some other things, and so the image of light and that which is immaterial, it hits the surface of the water, and this is the light of God. And on the water you have a distortion and you have more detail or whatever, but this is the nature of rabita, is the person who feels they have rabita, then rabita means a connection, then they might experience that. Of course, it's impossible that a human being such as myself can have any such power or influence. So what happens is what descends, it descends and it lands on a moving surface, which is the nature of in Nasut. Or another way we could say it is a person has an aspect of themselves that they haven't discovered, and the rabita is a connection in themselves to a person or an image that has become a likeness for them of an aspect of themselves. So in all cases, we say to Allah, we say, this is your beautiful Fatiha, and I say the Fatiha to you. You are the one who sent down the Fatiha, and all of the humans, they benefit from Fatiha. So if we consider from the point of view of the divine names, to him belong the divine names. Agreed? Lahul Asmaul Husna. But they're manifested very often in our world and in other intermediary worlds. So what, again, we understand is our experience of the names are usually in the world, in this world. And so the divine names it's a very interesting thing because in Western thought, so let's say we were just going to look at it in a more universal way, a more general way, then the old notion of as above, so below, very ancient idea, what is ethereal, what is in another domain, a noetic domain, a domain of ideas, a domain, so forth. These things are reflected in the world and in human beings. And so this ancient idea comes all the way down to us, and in certain religious books it's given more dimension, or it's sort of fleshed out so that we have a better sense of that. And in this regard, I'm thinking again of Hud. Huh? So Hud is a prophet in Quran, and he says, "Inni tawakkaltu Allah, Allahi, Rabbi wa Rabbikum, ma min dabatin illa huwa ahizun binasiyatiha. Inna Rabbi ala siratin mustaqim." This is very famous. Do you guys know this verse? I've told you about it before. So the Hud, he says, "Truly I put my trust and my faith and my guidance to Allah, my Lord and your Lord. There is not a creature walking upon the earth except that it is being pulled along by the lock of the forehead. Surely my Lord is on a straight path." Okay? So if you want to, you can go to the Surah Hud and you can read this for yourself. So the interesting thing about this is that the great Sufi and commentator Sheikh Ibn Arabi, he says the straight path cannot therefore be hidden. The straight path is clearly open and seen by everyone. Now I mention this because I'm choosing this because you have mentioned Fatiha. And God is mentioning the Sirat al-Mustaqim in here. But that people have an idea, most people they're thinking, "Oh, show us the straight path." And the Gnostics, the people who have experience, they realize that the straight path is absolutely visible. The thing you want to see about the straight path is that every single being, whether saint or sinner, whether intelligent or not intelligent, whether heading towards the paradise or heading towards the suffering of those who sin, every one of them is upon the straight path. So this is contrary to the idea of most people about the situation. You see what I'm trying to say? So, because most people there in the religion, they say, "Hey, I'm going to go to heaven, right? These other guys are not going to go to heaven, or I would like to go to heaven, and I hope I go to heaven. I'll make a deal with you if I blah 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 blah. I'll go to heaven." You see, so but for Ibn Arabi and for the Sufis, it's simply not that way. Everything is moving along. Every single thing we see according to the divine names. So in other words, all of this sort of a reflection from another world, and therefore, in the individual, we see that the reason. So why would we do zikr, for example? The reason we would do zikr is because of tahliya and tasfiya. So tahliya would be khali shodan, you becoming empty. The purpose of zikr is you are sitting, and tasfiya, it's purification. See, because people don't realize that he is pulling them. Yes, he is pulling them along the straight path, but they don't have to be turning their head each time looking this way and this way on the straight path. They usually are, but if they just allow him to pull them along the straight path, and if they just watch, they will see that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, this world is a dream. This world is a dream. And when you go into the other world, you will wake up. But also what we know from Quran and Hadith and so forth, he says, but you can wake up in this world. You see? So this world is a dream. Now that's not necessarily bad news because, well, in many cases I would have hoped it was a dream and I could wake up from it. But in other cases you say, well, it's a dream and I'm somehow distracted by it. Isn't that true? So the idea of the purification is that if only we knew how much more we had been given, you see. And if we could just realize our, let's say in English we would say these days, our full potential, right? So, but full potential for the Muslim and the Sufi and the other spiritual people is it means they have found something more valuable than themselves. In the same way that Rumi says that the mirror is made of good iron. And he says, you human beings, you are good iron. And if you polish this, then a reflection of the sun could be seen in it, for example. And if you see the reflection of the sun in the mirror, the truth is you can no longer see the mirror. Whereas, if you see, you're looking in the mirror and you happen to notice some longer hair in your eyebrow, which happens a lot to me these days, then you see that, but you're also aware that you're looking into the mirror. See, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between the mirror of my earthly nature, bashariyat, and the mirror that frees me from my bashariyat. And that capacity of being freed from bashariyat, it's not superhuman. It is the what they call the completed human, kamel. Huh? Some people say perfect human, but really it just means complete. They have a complete experience, a complete sense of their nature. So the beauty of this is that don't worry about anything because it's all, this is again, from Ibn Arabi's point of view, looking at chapter Hud, don't worry about anything. You're being pulled along, like you have no choice, you could say. You're being pulled along the straight path. He says, I have everyone. If they can walk, Dava means they can, some moving creature. So we don't know if the rocks qualify or whatever, but we know certainly the animals and the human being, they're all being pulled along by the lock of their hair. And Ibn Arabi says, because of the language of this verse that I quoted to you from Hud, he says, and therefore God is on a straight path while pulling everyone along by the forelock. Whether, and he says furthermore, he says whether they are on their way to great tragedy, it is all in the, is it not in the divine names? See, so the divine names include being lost, being abased, and so forth. And then other divine names are about being redeemed and given guidance. And you see, so whether not having guidance or whether having guidance according to this verse, everyone is being pulled upon the straight path. So that, what is the advantage of that? The advantage of that is that we stop working on projects that don't work. Like, I'm going to become better, I'm going to become this, I'm going to become this. These are all self-interest. See, and self-interest cannot necessarily be the divine interest. Even if a person thinks their self-interest is divine interest, see? Because usually the nafs is bargaining and is afraid of death, is afraid of having nothing and no power, etc. And so it's coming, the nafs is coming from this place. Whereas the other part of the self, has absolutely no relationship to this. So how do we know? The way we know is we save time, because we see any kind of, in zikr, for example, we see visions, we have memories, we have feelings, we have this and we have that. No matter how strange or anything it becomes, we don't even care. We're sitting there saying, oh, Allah, Allah, doing the zikr as we have been told. And we are waiting for the nuzul. What's nuzul? The descent. The descent is unmistakable. So the descent will come into the heart. The descent is when he is saying, Inni ana Allah. So he's saying it from inside the person, not with words. It's just clear that somehow he possesses everything, and whereas he allowed the other tenants to stay in their houses, in your house, he has come to demand that you give back the house to him. See, that's the difference. So there's all these people on the street that have all of these houses, but in some of the houses, he will come and say, hey, I want my house back. Essentially, okay, so if you think of the house as the nafs, so this is how you will know. And in the meantime, don't worry at all. Don't like say, well, some angel appeared to me and said, you are a great person. Who cares? I'm not interested in the angel saying you are a great person. Or some devil come and says you are a devil, or you are fighting with yourself. See, people are often, they're fighting with themselves, so they have sabotage. They're sabotaging. They have self-sabotage, thoughts and ideas, everything. They're sabotaging themselves to prove maybe some parent of theirs says you're not worth anything or whatever. See, so there's all this stuff, and you have to not have strong emotion for any of those things, positive or negative. They are not what we're looking for. So we just say, oh yeah, I know that story. I know. You see, whatever it is often very repetitive. But beware of these stories. They are a dream. You will see they are a dream, because eventually the zikr is such that you are in a waking dream. You realize you are in a waking dream. So you will realize, because you realize I'm not asleep, but what is in my mind is really like the dreams that I have in my sleep. So there's one possible element that would happen. And all that does is it frees you from falling to sleep. See, a lot of people, they would be at that point and then they actually fall asleep. So one of the values, again, I was saying tahliya and tasfiya. Khali shodan and safi shodan. Huh? So the meaning self-emptying and purification. It just means one is, let's say there was a neurotic person, an OCD person who was washing their hand all the time. Agreed? These people exist. I wish I was one of them. My hands are always dirty. But the point is, it is not true that person will become cleaner, is it? In fact, they probably have a kind of neurosis, agreed? And but what if instead of the therapist or whoever saying to them, here, take these pills, or here, it just says, hey, you're probably going to live with some of this for your life, and it's not important. It doesn't matter. Just let it be at a level that you don't give it more energy. Don't give it more psychological or psychic energy by giving it too much power. And those of us who have been in psychotherapy, we know that there are always elements. There are elements of self-sabotage or elements of projection and so on and so forth. And the idea here is to not waste your time, to address what you need to. Now, I'm not talking here about someone is suicidal, let's say, and you say, oh, don't worry about it. No, that I'm not talking about emergencies where one tries to help. The whole purpose of mercy in the human being is that they would open themselves to help other people. I'm talking about the individual who says, I want to be a spiritual seeker. And then they embark upon a path which is very often full of rules that don't work. That's what I'm talking about. So instead they diffuse the energy of their preoccupation, and they know, anyone who comes to know the presence of God knows that he already possesses the heart. He already has the person. It's just there was a veil. What really happened is there was a veil that needed to be lifted. And as soon as they relaxed and just turned to the thought, the very thought of God, you see, then when I say the thought of God, another way, let me say it in a more general way, the thought of the absolute, the thought of the infinite, the thought of what the consciousness is capable of, if it is not absorbed in something trivial, which is self-interest, self-sabotage. These are all very trivial things by comparison to the vast awareness of God, you see? So it makes the Sufi path very easy if you think about it this way. And so I have deviated a little bit from the statement that was made, but I take it as a possibility for introducing the idea that when we have a rabita, do not become attached to. See, because a rabita doesn't mean an attachment. Do not become attached to the attachment. You see? So you just you grasp that it's there, and you say La ilaha illallah. There's no God but Allah. You say you give thanks. You say, thank you, Allah, that you have provided people who give charity upon the road, and to dervishes who give advice along the road. But we are not on the road for their sake, are we? We're on the road because we are going somewhere. So we don't want to stop along the road. We want to keep going. So it is permissible to have rabita, but we must not become trapped in such a thing. We just say this is something that is like an avatar in me, meaning in the person. It is a representation. It's a representation of some aspect of the person. You see, inside. So never, always say, oh, thank you, God, you have shown one of your names. That's why in the Sufi world they say, so-and-so, who is one of the names of God. See? They don't say he is God, they say he is one of the names of God. But isn't also the one who brings low one of the names of God? Isn't the one who guides, makes you go astray, isn't that one of the names of God? You see what I'm trying to say? So you say, oh God, thank you for sending to me one of your merciful names. Thank you for sending one of your generous names, one of your powerful names. And sort of thank you for sending Donald Trump, or like that. So, but I mean, you have to still realize this is a part of this is all. Yeah, but you see what I'm trying to say? That be careful about any kind of entrapment. The divine names belong to Him, and in His divine names there is a hierarchy. And as we know, the mercy precedes the wrath, but we also know that unity So another way to think of it is the reason for tahliya and tasfiyah is because of multiplicity, because we have many things happening. So the whole idea of emptying and purification is that we would for the first time we would experience freedom. For the first time we would experience freedom, and then now we want to cultivate that. We want to learn to cultivate the freedom where it's not that one, as they say, laughs at oneself. There's actually nothing there except the presence, you see, and one's participation in the presence. And as we, the Sufis say they become purified, then they go out in the world and they become soiled again. There's a normal thing because they're in the world. So then they wash their clothes again in the zikr, and they are purified again. Don't we do that with the ghusl and the wudu anyway? See, so we do that. So they have moments of, let's call it true freedom, absolute freedom, and then moments of a relationship with freedom despite being a slave, or despite being a prisoner. See, so if suddenly somebody twists my arm while I'm enjoying freedom, my nervous system will say, "Oh, that hurts a lot," and so clearly I'm a prisoner at that point, right? To some extent. But the reason that we want to have the experience of freedom, of true freedom, is because this is in the future world. This is called Jannat. It's called heaven. You have only God's beauty and grace, and you have the freedom of endless beauty, the freedom of vastness, endless vastness, ecstasy, you see. Should you be in purgatory, you say, but Allah, you pulled me along by my forehead. I said, yes, and that's because you had upon you one of the names that was you were led astray. Doesn't mean, for Ibn Arabi, doesn't mean that person trapped forever. For him, the person still, God could eventually free them. So if you read his teachings, you can see that. I'm not so concerned with that. I'm concerned about the idea of cultivating freedom, spiritual freedom. See? So spiritual freedom requires that you know that anything that you think about it is not correct. When it happens to you, it will definitely seem correct. But whatever you think about it cannot possibly be correct. So it will manifest as the Lord of the universe will say clearly to you, not from the book, but from your heart, will say, Inni ana Allah, Rabbil Alameen. Truly I am God, the Lord of all of the worlds, you see. It doesn't belong to you at all. Zero. It's there because he is everywhere, and now you are feeling that, you see. So he's very kind. He comes to the house, he says, all right, tenant, I own this house. But unlike the other mean landlord who just throws him out, he says, it's okay, you can stay in the house. But my house, I will be here, but you can stay in the house, you see. All right? Oh my God, we have a half an hour still. Let me just read what this says. Oh, okay. So anyone else have a comment or question about this or anything else?
I saw John had a question.
I'm sorry? Yes?
What does it mean to be khilwati?
Well, khalwati is an interesting idea because first of all, it means to, for example, let's say it was a carpet. we say this carpet is this one is not very khilvat. Now this one is like full of designs on this carpet right here. But the one that you're sitting on, let's say this is very khilvat, isn't it? So it's very empty. So the idea of like khilvat ar anjuman, like if I relate it to the Sufi way, then we have the idea of being in a retreat, you see, in the crowd. Khilvat ar anjuman. So the anjuman is the populace, the numerous people. This is one of the principles of the Naqshbandi way. And Ustad gave me the name of Khilvati because there's a time when you become free, that's Khilvat. You see, because you have the refuge. You have death, disease, crazy ideas, etc., etc., etc. But you have a panah, you have a refuge from that, and your refuge is God. See, and God is the only refuge. God, it just means infinity. Let's say the person not religious. You don't have to say to them God. You say the infinite consciousness is freedom, and the restricted consciousness is bashariyat. You see, so you have both of these things. But if you have khilvat ar anjuman means that right now I can talk to you, even though. Again, I'm merely wishing to guide you. I'm just explaining to you. The universe is melting inside of me. It's dissipating, you see. So that one has to, he gives back the house, that's what I'm saying. He gives back the house so that you don't completely, because what happens if you are not ready? Isn't it true? Ustad had some friends, they were like running around naked. There were Sufis who were naked Sufis and so forth, huh? Am I right? Sounds crazy, but it's true, isn't it? Because they were not able to hold the house. They just became completely crazy. And so in places like Afghanistan, they don't throw them. Well, now they kill them. The Taliban just kill them. So this is a kafir. If I ever saw one, bang, you know. But in the past, like when I was there. They never interfered. They were scared actually to interfere. They were scared that they will get punished by God. You see, so, but we're not interested in that. Huh? We hope that's not our path. Our path is he allows us to stay in the house that was his. The other people, they don't know that yet. They say, no, this is my house. This is my house. No way. And God says, well, all right, you have less for that. You have much less. Because when I come into the house, I bring delicious food, I bring beautiful flowers, I bring everything. I bring infinity, I bring ecstasy, I bring a wine that will make you drunk for eternity, you see? So the thing about khilvat is a quality that we wish to cultivate according to the Naqshbandi way, khilvat ar anjuman. And it means that you are aware and able to relate to the world and the people around you, and at the same time you are in what should I say, painful joy. The joy is too much. See, did Ustad not say that the love is difficult? Isn't that right? See, he calls it, he's saying love. Okay, the ishq. That's fine. Ishq is the same thing. It's the same thing. He's saying you will not be able to stand it. He doesn't mean that. He means that you will be able to stand it if you learn. He doesn't mean he has it but you can't stand it. He's saying you better be ready for that. You better be ready. He wishes every one of you has this happen to you. But he warns you, he says, this is almost impossible to bear. So, okay, so that's khilwat. And I was telling some friends, I was telling some of our friends in Granada, they were asking me, it was an iftar that we had around the Night of Power, and I was trying to explain this doctrine of if you read, because they said to me, they're asking this power, then I said, listen, the less power you have, the more power you have. Or they put it this way, the less power you have, the more power you are given. They said at the end, there's a whole bunch of them. Some of them had turbans, and some of them are just, there's different groups of people actually I met during the trip. Same conversation sort of comes up. And this, in one case, they say, can you please say dua after the iftar? I said, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. When I say the dua, all I say is, oh God, these are my friends, please help them. So the person who knows, they know they have no, why would they be saying some complicated dua when they know they don't have any authority? You see? So I said, is that what you want? You want me to say, do you want me to say a religious dua or something like this? I don't do that. I just say, oh God, my friend is hurting, please help my friend. And which anyone could say, right? Anyone could say that. So, and I also was explaining that as you get older, remember I talked to you guys about this not long ago, chun pir shadi bada du chandon minush. So when you become old, you're drinking wine, twice as much wine. This is a wonderful thing that I have been trying to share is I am older, I forget things, I have less, I become tired more easily because I have a thyroid thing, I have other things. But what I have learned is that if you stay in the zikr, he will never take away again. Meaning he will never leave the house again, is what I'm trying to say. And therefore, one of these days, when I am completely demented and with Alzheimer's or whatever happens to me, but let's just say, I assure you, I'm already aware that he will not take away what he has given in terms of his presence, because I already experimented. So if I hadn't become old and complained and if I had given up, you see what I'm trying to say? So in other words, the verification, earlier we were talking about arif, so the arif is interested in ma'rifat, and ma'rifat is wisdom and knowledge and so forth. But some of the wisdoms you cannot know until you get to a certain situation. And in the situation of older age and weakness, you think everything is going away, but in fact you are giving new gifts, new knowledge. And the knowledge that he gives is no matter what happens to your bones, no matter what happens to your mind, once he has sit in your heart, he will never take that back. You see? It's a great blessing to understand. I could not have told you this 10 years ago. So the weaker you are, don't worry, that you will be strong because he's with you. So have faith in that. You see what I'm saying? No matter how hard it is, just stay longer. Try, stay in zikr longer, and don't give up. Like life goes very quickly, huh? Don't waste your time. spend time on life and spend time cultivating the awareness of God. Anybody?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're
Right,
welcome.
this is so cool though. Right. Thank you so much. It's beautiful.
Anyone else have something? We still have a little bit of time. So if you have some چیزی سوال ندارین که چیزی ندارین؟ Abdullah Jan.
If you could, you've spoken about this before, but if you could speak a little bit more about perhaps those, or when Allah speaks about face of Allah,
Wajhullah, yeah. Well, فَإِنَّمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. So whichever way you turn, there's the face of Allah. Of course, you know this verse, huh? So that's very important, because on the one hand, whether I see the rose, which believe me, I would much rather see than Donald Trump, but whether I see this or I see Donald Trump, there's the face of God. See, because it's in the divine names. Either way, it's in the divine names, and I must try to learn that, or I will feel such despair that. So, in other words, the world is being created and destroyed. Why am I only interested in the creative part of it? Because I don't want to be destroyed, right? Because people don't want their civilization, they don't want their culture, they don't want their children, they don't want what they love to be destroyed. But it will all perish, won't it? Will it not? Except for His face. So when we look at Quran, we have, first of all, the idea that whichever way you turn, there's going to be the face of God. But at the same time, the actual face of God, in terms of experiencing Him, is possible. Huh? It says it in the Quran. Wujuhun yawma'izin nadira ila rabbiha nazira. So in this case, He has also given you wajha. Agreed? He's given you a face. And that is a mirror of, it's like the tiniest particle. He makes a relationship with every wajha, with every face. So you can be absolutely sure that He is always with you. You can be absolutely sure that He knows your face, and in a sense, you are the reflection of that aspect of His face. And therefore, you have two knowledges. You have the knowledge that everything else is the face, and I should accept that, and I should attend to the face that He has given to me and that He shows to me. So when I say that He settles in, He is the faces we are talking about. They are not the other meaning of wajha is aspect. Okay, so which can mean face in English also, but it has a broader meaning, and wajha has a broader meaning. So the broader meaning is that I should realize that He has, even in me. See, so let's say in me, I'm angry. Do I not have a face for anger? Do I not have a face for fear, or for love, or for gaiety and celebration? You see, do I not have a face? I have a face for each one of those things. And so the face, though, that interests me the most should be the face that remains. Agreed? So this is called wajh baqi. There's wajh fani and wajh baqi. So wajh fani is the aspect that fani, it will perish. Wajibaki, you cannot, even if you tried, even if you thought you hated religion, you hate God, you hate everything, you will not escape the fact that He has given you an aspect that is permanent, that will survive. Now, obviously, we are not. Some in our lives we may have been at times so depressed or so down or so whatever that we have to deal with this. But the main thing here is to understand that what I'm talking about to you earlier is nothing other than discovering the Wajibaki. It's not given to you; you already have it. What's given is the lifting of the curtain. So then you realize you have the Wajibaki, and so you would be less concerned about the other aspect, you see. Similarly, He has aspects that will destroy the world. He has aspects that will recreate the world. I want you to think about something. In the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Quran is revealed. And what we know is that God says everywhere there's misal, everything is given. He also says everything is given according to its time and place, essentially. And therefore, what He gives and what He reveals, as I've explained to you in conversations about the Quran, for example, I've explained to you that it's very clear from the Quran that He doesn't like slavery, even though slavery is still permitted at that time. We know that because if you have sinned a great deal or something, if you free a slave, it's like you had given a huge amount of gold away or something. You see what I mean? So in this sense of it, I want you to think about what was known at that time, because when He says, Huwal awalu wal akhiru wal zahiru wal batin, He is the first and the last. He is the outer and the inner, okay? Or actually the manifest and the hidden in this case. So, in terms of quantity, during those times when the revelation came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I will give a Quran in Arabic. I will give a Quran that is suitable for your people. It is a continuation of the other books, and it is the last of the revelations. The fact that it's the last of the revelations doesn't mean that it is solid. It means it's vast, actually. It's vast. It has a lot of very interesting information in it. So when He says, when God says, samawati wal ard, the heavens and the earth, does He say that a lot in the Quran? Lahul samawati wal ard. So many ways, huh? Imagine at that time what samawat meant. What was the extent of it? So if we look at the Quran, we can see the extent of it meant either the sky that we see, or we find out there are tara'ek, there are planets moving around, you see. So there's a sense of how big that is, okay? Roughly speaking. It is of a certain, it permeates the mind of the human being, and the human being sets up a relationship with what is around us. So when we look around, we say, the world, like if you were living on a desert island, your sense of the world would be very small. But if you travel around the world, your sense would be different, agreed? So there's a case of proportion. However, if we say, Lahul samawati wal ard, remember that the art part of it, the earth part of it, it actually, our knowledge of it, in the time of the knowledge, in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was very broad. They actually had so many people coming from everywhere. They're not just coming, they knew about Ethiopia. I think you guys know all of this stuff. They knew people coming from China. They knew people. So they didn't know about the New World, but they knew about most of the world. And so relatively speaking, consider what they knew at this time. Now, if we say that's the Zahir, now the Batin with the Sufi, let's say, compared to the religious scholar, the Batin is much vaster, agreed? Is very, very vast. But isn't it true that most people we know that they don't experience that? We know because we ask them, or because they tell us, or because it becomes clear that even arguably you could say this culture of ours here has very little investment in the infinite. They're interested in trinkets and whatever, possession, power, etc. But these have nothing to do with the potential vastness that is being spoken about in the Quran and in the Sufi way. Not just Sufi way, but I mean we are here discussing it from the Sufi point of view. So I think you'll agree in those verses there's a relationship between Samawati and Art. There's a relationship between the heavens and the earth. In terms of the individual's experience of what is hidden as a Sufi or Arif or whatever, as they move forward, they actually are able to experience, according to the Hadith and to Quran, they're able to experience God's vastness, okay? So he says, my heaven and my earth do not comprehend me, but the heart of my servant, the faithful, comprehends me, grasps me, experiences me. So I think you'll agree that in that statement, even in the time, or maybe especially in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are people who are very, very full of spiritual experience that extends in the domains of the batin. In the Zahir, they know what they see, they know what they have heard, and so there's this verse in Quran where God says to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Qul la aqulu lakum indi khaza'inullahi la a'lamu al-ghayba la aqulu lakum inni malak in atabi'u ila ma yuha ilayya." You guys know this verse? Yeah. It's a very beautiful verse, because think of it. Qul, God says, say. Qul la aqulu lakum. Say, I don't say. You see, it's a very, very interesting verse in Quran. Say to them, meaning, O Muhammad, say to the people, say to them, I don't say to you that I have understanding or possession of the secrets of God. You see, Hazanullahi. Wa la a'lamu al-ghayba. And I have no knowledge of the unseen. I don't say to you that I'm an angel. The punchline is I only follow that which has been revealed to me. Okay? This very important verse you should know. This is in Imran, I think. This is in Imran. Qul la aqulu lakum indi hazanullahi la a'lamu al-ghayba la aqulu lakum inni malak in atabi'u ila ma yuha ilayya. Very important verse, because you have to ask yourself, why is God in many places asking for Muhammad to vouch for this? What is the purpose of it? And one purpose, of course, is that he does not want people to worship Muhammad the way, say, the Egyptians worship the Pharaoh. You see? So that's one reason. But another reason is for you and me. He's saying, tell them that I've given you essentially the entire universe of the batin, but I have not given you the entire universe of the zahir. You see, because that's what he's basically saying. I've given you for yourself. He doesn't say the Hazan Malay. Hazan Malay is the treasure houses which would be revealed over time. But what he did give to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a heart that could encompass the vastness. Agreed? This is the bushra. This is the great good news. Because in our times, I want you to think about how big the samawat is. How big actually. I'm not saying we know everything at this time, but I want you to ponder for a minute. When I was a young man, and actually maybe late teens, I forget when it happened, and the first time they went up to the moon and they could see the earth, it changed everything, because now you could see the earth, what it looks like, the art. You are somewhere else and you are looking at the earth. The next thing that happens is they keep developing more powerful and powerful telescopes. And what we see is beyond comprehension. What we see is that we cannot be even as much as a piece of dust. I mean, our planet I'm talking about, not our individual nature, our planet. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Is that you have a different sense of samawat. And you can't help it. Those people who were raised in the last 30 years, they would already have been taught, they would already be seeing pictures. They're not even taught, they don't even speak yet, but they see it on TV or elsewhere, they see a picture of the earth. And they relate to it, meaning it's part of their consciousness. Just as in the past, the consciousness of those people was very limited, their consciousness is still limited, but it's broader, agreed? They have no spiritual knowledge necessarily. I'm talking about the knowledge of samawat based on what we see. All I'm trying to say to you is, as time goes on, in truth, the samawat and the ard are the same, meaning they have the same potential vastness. In other words, the batin and the zahir, but the zahir was more hidden and the batin was also hidden, except to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the other people receiving the vastness. Because whoever experiences the vastness, however far they look inside of themselves, they will not see the end. See, that's another quality. They cannot see any ending to it. I'm saying, when I say see, I don't mean with the eyes, I mean with the basira. They see it has no limitation whatsoever. And that accords with the hadith, doesn't it? My earth and my heaven do not contain me. Me is him, right? Is God. Does he have any limitation? He has no limitation. So that's why it's not a surprise if you look inside, you see no limitation to the expansiveness in your heart. However, when people look outside and they see the cosmos, does that not elicit a certain emotion called awe? Second point, does that not elicit awe even in an atheist? So the commonality is awe, is they are surprised, they are astonished, they are lifted, they are expanded, because he is showing the zahir used to be batin, you could say. You follow me? So now you're seeing out into the cosmos and you say, of course they must be related. Of course they must be on the same standing, because it cannot be otherwise, since he is the Zahir and the Batin, you see. They're equally infinite, and we wouldn't have known that to the extent that we do. See, I'm not saying at all that we found it clearly. I'm saying we have not found the extent of it. I'm saying that by comparison, we now know, now we can say, now listen, we're in this little room here that is, it's this little tiny micro pinpoint on a piece of dust that is floating around among billions of pieces of dust. Do you see how beautiful that is? So that you say, how can this be? It can only be that His Majesty is manifesting everywhere. And today, therefore, we have more possibility to share that all. We don't have to say to a person, listen to me, do what I say. No, we just say, oh yeah, isn't it astonishing? Look at, we don't need to use mystical language. We can just say, aren't you astonished by the sky? Aren't you astonished by these images that we get from beyond? Aren't you astonished? You see? So in other words, there's an expansion, which is also... Now the Batin expansion in the human being, however, is a different thing, because this human being, each one of us, is limited by this body. This body is very temporary. The nafs is restricted. So this Zahir is not very big, is it? However, the Batin is a channel to the infinite, as Rumi says. So this has no relationship to infinity. It will perish. But the heart is related to the infinite. So again, coming back to the theme of don't worry about little things. Well, let me tell you, the earth is a very little thing, and your particular place in it is a very little thing. Your feelings about it are a very little thing. Wouldn't it be better to get into what is really the right thing? Let all your worries and all your difficulties become very little things to you. And let His Majesty, let that vastness become very deep and very big for you.